What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. So, today I'm going to be talking about where to start with a psychedelic medicine journey, not just psychedelics recreationally. This video is not for that, it's not about that. This is specifically for psychedelics in therapeutic use. The reason I'm making this video is because when I first heard about these medicines, I didn't really know where to start, what to do, how to find someone that could help me, how to prepare for that, right? I had no clue what the first step was. So if you don't have very much experience with psychedelics, or if you're just now shifting from doing them recreationally to perhaps doing them more therapeutically, this video is for you. I'm going to talk about what I did and how I got started. So step one was, of course, just learning about it. And by that, I mean both discovering it and then once I discovered it, researching more about it so that I could educate myself on it. And now, when I say it, I don't just mean psychedelics. I also mean what you're trying to heal with psychedelics. So there's a bunch of different things that psychedelics can help us heal. Generally, I feel comfortable saying that they all sort of boil down to trauma. And not just like PTSD, war victims. I mean, like my experience, which was mostly neglect. It took me about a year and a half to 2 years from the day that I found out about this to the day that I actually did it. And in that time, I read a ton of books. And of course, I'm not going to go into detail about every single one of these books, but to name a few, there is The Ketamine Papers, A Dose of Hope, there's How to Do the Work, Trust, Surrender, Receive, One Last Talk, The Drama of the Gifted Child, The Body Keeps the Score, Gabor Mate's books, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, right? And these are just the ones that I happen to read. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of other amazing books that are on both of these topics. And so one of the reasons that I did so much research is because A, I wanted to take it very seriously, and B, I knew that this is not something that is for everyone. And so instead of just jumping in and doing it and potentially traumatizing myself even more, I wanted to make sure that it was the right thing for me. So I learned, a lot about what each specific medicine is good for. I learned about, what's happening chemically in my brain when I take these medicines. And there's just so much to cover. Step two was once I've figured out, all right, this seems like something that could benefit me. I had to ask myself, why? Why is it going to benefit me? But also, why am I going to do this? Why not try one of the hundreds of other options that exist to help me deal with trauma, right? Because what I wanted to heal was trauma. And so, all right, there's plenty of ways to do that. Why am I going to do psychedelic medicine? That sounded very intense of a way to start. And my why was that I'd actually already done a ton of these different methods, right? I'd done talk therapy with several different therapists for several years. I'd written a couple of memoirs, which can be very therapeutic. I tried 12-step recovery groups. I tried meditation. I tried journaling. I tried so many different things. And my why came at a moment in my life where I felt like I don't know what else to do. All of these things have helped me to some degree, but nothing's really helping me anymore. And so at the time, I had just entered a relationship only to find out that my girlfriend was still close friends with someone that she had slept with. And this triggered some massive jealousy. And I'm not going to go into the specifics, but basically I presented her with an ultimatum, right? Where I was like, it's either him or it's me. So I did that, it backfired, and she was like, well, I'm not going to be with you then, because that's controlling. And after a couple of days of reflecting on it, I was like, you know what, man, this has popped up for me in all of my relationships, this jealousy and this need to control. Sure, I could walk away from this relationship and then I'll find someone else, right? But I wasn't sure that this same exact situation wasn't going to just reappear, right? Because I'm not dealing with it. I've been running from it. And so I decided I'm going to take a leap of faith. I'm going to trust this girl and I'm going to see what it's like. So, long story short, we decided to give it a try. And then as soon as it was like official, like, all right, we're doing this, I was like, fuck, dude, like, I want to do this, but how am I sure that I'm going to be able to, right? Every relationship before this, the situation was easier and I reacted way worse. And so, caught up in that, like, this has happened to me plenty of times before. What I've been doing hasn't been working. I feel helpless. I need something else, something different, something I haven't tried. So in a way, psychedelics felt like the only option I had left. And on the topic of options, step 3 is considering what other options haven't I tried. So this was a step that I had just already kind of done, and I even considered, there was still like EMDR, and there was psychodramas or family dramas or whatever they're called. There were still a couple things that I hadn't tried, but they all sort of felt like derivatives of things that I had tried. But so in considering other options, right, this is why it's important to educate myself on what am I trying to get at, right? Okay, it's trauma, but what specifically? Oh, it's something with my parents? All right, then I'm going to read Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents so that I can understand what the hell's going on, and then I can figure out what the best option is, which might be, talk therapy or some other form of counseling. If I was sexually abused, or if I have a lot of physical trauma stored in the body, which most people do, there are a ton of ways to do what's called somatic release, right? People dance. That's why people love to dance, and that's why a lot of people do MDMA at raves and all this kind of stuff. There's yoga, there's body workers, there's breath work, there's energy workers. There's so many different things to try. And not only might those things help me to heal the wound in and of itself, they also, even if I decide to try psychedelic medicine after trying all of those things, all of these things prepare me for psychedelic medicine. Step 4, am I prepared? There's 2 elements to this. There is preparing like logistically. There's a lot of supplements that we can take. A lot of people fast. A lot of people stop consuming so much media for like a week prior to their sessions. There's reading books. There's all those things, right? And there's also like integration practices and taking stock of like which ones do I already have. I'll get into integration at the end of the video, but basically that means, what activities do I have in my life or support exists that help me to integrate very intense, very emotional experiences into my daily life. But the second element, and the more important one, is am I ready for a potentially paradigm shifting experience to take place in my life? Am I ready to end that relationship that I'm miserable in? Am I ready to quit that job that I hate? Am I ready to call that person that I've been avoiding, right? These are the deeper questions that I found very useful in answering before I tried this. And one of the best books that sort of guided me through a lot of these was A Dose of Hope, as well as One Last Talk. That one's really good too. But that is a hard fact about doing psychedelic medicine, doing it right, is that it's going to, unless you're already really well adjusted, not to the traumatized society that we live in, but to the healthy societies that we came from, psychedelic journeys and therapeutic contexts are going to flip your life upside down. Because my experience, at least, was that my life was upside down. And so psychedelics had to flip it right side up. But that at the beginning can feel like it's being flipped wrong side down again. And so what I mean by this is that before psychedelics, I cried and I felt emotions for sure. But after psychedelics, I started to feel emotions on a different scale. This actually just happened recently where a friend of mine invited me to a weekend trip for 4th of July. And I said yes initially. And then the night before we were going to leave, I woke up at 4 in the morning. And I shit you not, I woke up and I just felt this intense sadness and this grief and this feeling that I hadn't felt since I was in grade school, right? When somebody invited me over to their house and I was like afraid to not be at my home. And so at 4 in the morning, I sat up in bed and I was like, all right, what's going on? And then 2 or 3 minutes later, I am sobbing like a full heavy cry. And I realized, I don't drink, maybe once every 3 or 4 months. But this was one of those trips where like we were gonna go party and drink and do that kind of thing, which I haven't done in a long time. But I had sort of convinced myself like, hey, I need an escape and blah blah. And then I wake up at 4 in the morning and I was like, hey, listen, man, like that knowledge that the psychedelics gave me came up for me just naturally, where it was like, you're escaping. You think that, it's a little break or whatever, but you don't drink to get drunk and to just party anymore. That's not you. Don't do this. This feels like we're betraying ourselves. And so I cried about it for a long time, right? I felt this what might sound like this very simple, like, okay, I realized I was betraying myself and then I decided not to go. I felt that deeply at my core of like, wow, it was so easy for me to just say yes to this thing that actually does not align with who I am anymore. And so I canceled on my friend and I said, hey, man, I don't think that I'm in the right headspace to go right now, right? And then I just didn't go and I stayed home instead. And another brief example of that is, after my second session, I kind of came to a hard realization that the relationship I was in at the time was no longer a relationship I was happy in. And so again, I was faced with this decision of like, do I want to stay where I've been my whole life, or now that the medicine has shown me the path and the answers, am I going to have the courage to act on that? And I'm not saying this from like an ego standpoint of like, are you prepared and blah, blah. It's like, no, man, it's fucking hard to make those decisions. And if you're anything like me, it can feel like you are dying. Literally, it can feel like the world is ending when you make those decisions. So it's important, that before you go and jump into the fire, that if you're ready to deal with all of the shit that it's going to bring up. And if you have the proper support of people who aren't going to judge you for doing this, that you can talk to about your experiences to help you sort of unload some of this weight. Step number 5 is, once you feel that you are ready and once you feel that, yes, you're prepared and you've educated yourself, the question you might start asking yourself is, how do I find a shaman or a guide? And if I find someone, how do I know that they're the right one, right? What do I look for in these people? So unless you're in a country where these medicines are legal, or unless you're doing ketamine in the United States, then you're going to find that these are all still illegal at the time that I'm recording this video. And so it's a little bit trickier. And now there is sort of this underground network of healers and shamans who do these sessions. Like this is how they make a living. But obviously most of them aren't advertising this openly because it is illegal. And that's the first thing to look for, is if this person that you find is advertising openly on Instagram that, they are a mushroom healer or a MDMA guide or whatever, it's like, that is a red flag for me. But so what I did was, there was a couple of options that I could have gone down. The first was I found a local wellness center here in Austin, Texas, and it has like a sauna and cold plunge and just, it offers ketamine treatment legally. And in the sauna, what I came to find out was that a lot of people were talking about psychedelics in this therapeutic context. And a lot of these people know of healers or shamans or, and so asking somebody in a sauna, like, hey, I'm interested in this. Is there somewhere that could you guide me in the right direction? The second one is to look up, Facebook groups for spiritual communities in your hometown or in your city or wherever you're living. And not necessarily to post about it on those groups. I would not advise to do that, but more so go to the events that these groups are hosting, build relationships with the people, and then if it feels right, you can ask somebody, hey, I'm interested in doing psychedelic medicine. Is this something that you know about, or blah, 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 right? A lot of people that practice sort of like body work or breath work or energy work or whatever, they might either know somebody that also holds space for medicine sessions, or they might do it themselves. The third option, which is the one that I went down, is that I emailed somebody directly that talks about it openly, about psychedelics and his experience with it. And he even openly talks about how people can email him and ask him the way that I did. I'm not going to give his name out just in case, I don't know that is ethically the right thing to do. Even though he does it, I don't want to assume that he would be okay with me doing it. But there's a lot of people that talk about this openly, and it wouldn't hurt to email one of them. Maybe they won't give you, a direct reference the way that this person gave me, but they might be able to point you in the right direction. And so once I found the shaman, for me it was different because number one, the person that referred me to them was already a huge name in this space. And so it was like, oh, you've worked with them. They literally trained this person to do psychedelic medicine sessions. And so I was already like, that this is enough for me. Still, some of the things that I looked for were, what's their experience level? Meaning not just how long have they been practicing psychedelic medicine, but also how long have they been in the healing space, and how long have they been doing shamanic work or energy work or maybe counseling, right? Whatever their specialty was before psychedelics. How long have they been doing that, and how long have they been doing psychedelic medicine? Have they done psychedelics, right? Because if they haven't, I would never do it with anyone who hasn't done it. And a trickier one is, have they done their own inner work? Right? And this one is hard to figure out. I just had to ask questions. But again, this is where your education on trauma and therapy and healing work comes into play, is that I've read so many books on these topics, and I had years and years of experience trying to heal and doing some healing. So when I meet somebody that hasn't done that work, even if they're a self-proclaimed guru or they're saying that they've done so much work, I can tell, man. The more I understand about healing, the more it's easier for me to spot the phonies. And a final way to sort of gauge is, a lot of these people, like I said, they practice other forms of healing. So instead of jumping into a psychedelic session with them, which most people don't just jump straight into, that's a good indicator, is like, if they're just like, yeah, come over and fucking let's do 10 grams of mushrooms, it's like, whoa, don't do that. Most properly trained guides will want to get to know you first, and perhaps even do like a breathwork session before they jump into psychedelics with you, just so that both of you can get a feel for each other. Because even if they are like the best expert in the whole world and you are like super prepared, you might just not be a match. But if it is, step 6 is picking the medicine. So the way I think of medicines is that each one is a tool, right? And so if I have to hammer a nail into a wall, then I'm going to need a nail, a hammer. But if I'm trying to hammer a nail into a wall, I'm not going to use a fucking handsaw, right? That would be stupid, because that's not what handsaws are for. And so if I am trying to heal trauma, there are medicines that are best for that, right? I would argue that most medicines help heal trauma to some degree, but again, you could hammer a nail in with a screwdriver, the back of a screwdriver, but it's not going to be as efficient as if you used a hammer. And so traditionally, the medicine that is most suitable for trauma is going to be MDMA. So if I want to start healing with trauma, I'm probably going to start with MDMA. Alternatively, if I don't even feel ready for MDMA, I might start microdosing I can either start with a sort of semi-low dose with the healer, or I can, if I can afford that, right, these sessions tend to be expensive, I can also play around with microdosing on my own, which I've done. I wouldn't recommend personally. It wasn't a great experience for me, but everybody has different experiences. What I don't recommend is jumping into, right, some of the higher tier, right, because there's tiers. Like MDMA and mushrooms are like tier 1, what is kind of not safe, but sort of, you're not gonna have a fucking psychotic break probably on MDMA and mushrooms. And then once you feel comfortable with that, once you've done enough work with that, it's generally recommended, like, all right, now it would be okay if you decided to step up to, say, LSD or ketamine or something like that, right? I don't know the tiers exactly, so don't quote me on it. But a lot of people, right? Ayahuasca, that is the one that is most popular right now. And it's the one that people love to say, they love to pronounce ayahuasca, right? Mother ayahuasca, right? Do what you would like. I would not recommend starting with that. And most of the people who know what the fuck they're talking about would not recommend starting with that either. The best way I've heard it said is doing ayahuasca, starting your medicine journey with ayahuasca is like trying to learn how to swim in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right? And I know, because even though I didn't do it in a therapeutic context, before I did MDMA, before I did ketamine and mushrooms, I did DMT, and I thought that I had died. And that was not, it may have helped me. In retrospect, I can look back on the experience and see the lessons that are there, but it's not something that I would do over again. If I could do it over, I would start with MDMA or mushrooms. But so once I made the shift from recreational to therapeutic, what I started with was mushrooms with a friend, sort of aspiring healer, and then I jumped into MDMA, and then I combined MDMA and mushrooms. Step number 7 is going to be integration. And now the word integration is something that gets tossed around probably even more than ayahuasca. It's been my experience that people misunderstand what integration is, or they just don't know what it is. So the way that I break it down is that integration, at its core, means making different choices. So if, for example, I am an alcoholic, and then I go and I do 2 MDMA sessions, and I get to the core reason why I became an alcoholic, and I realize that I don't need to do that anymore. Integration literally just means not doing that anymore. That means that I have taken the lessons shown to me by the medicine, and I've realized, oh, these were solutions to a problem that I don't need to solve this way anymore. I'm going to figure out a new solution so that I don't have to do this anymore, right? So it's not exactly just not doing it, but it's figuring out a new choice, a different choice. And now what you may or may not have heard of with integration are integration practices. Integration doesn't mean doing these things. Doing these things is supposed to help integrate. And so a few of my integration practices are journaling, painting, any sort of creative expression, writing, nature walks, meditation, physical exercise. My shaman and I have an integration session after each medicine session. And then probably the most important one is feeling, right? Now, I'm a very sensitive person, so I allow myself longer than most to integrate. But until I've sorted through what came up for me and I've made new choices and I've learned the lessons, I don't need to go digging up more trauma and more wounds. So I really like to make sure that I have dealt with the stuff that came up in my session before I do another session. And a bonus step, if you've stuck around to this point of the video, number 8 is that there isn't one correct way to go about this, but there is a recommended way that a lot of actual professionals talk about. And it's been my experience that if I follow that blueprint, I not only increase the effectiveness of my sessions, but I avoid a world of hurt and a bunch of wasted money. So anyway, I hope this video helps or touches you in some way. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. I'll do my best to get to them. And if you've started your own medicine journey, feel free to leave a comment below and let me know what that's been like or what you've learned. I've found that reading other people's trip reports or healing reports can actually be very therapeutic and very helpful. So, you never know who you might be helping by leaving a comment, sharing your story, or sharing your struggles. But anyway, thanks for stopping by, and I will see you next time.